Even physically pushing myself past what I should, and then I hurt my back, or I pull a muscle, and then it takes me out for like a month, which is horrible, and I'm like traumatized. But so I've spent most of my life just constantly like driving myself. Be better, do better, work harder, harder, and ignoring the signals my body gives me. Here's the thing though, people, if we keep ignoring them, our bodies are just going to keep screaming louder. And that's what started happening to me. Like, I could get away with it more when I was younger. And now the older I get, and some of you listening is like, oh my God, you're not that old. But just calm down, listen up. I'll be 40 this year, okay? I know it's not that old, but it's older than when I was 20. I am saying that. So I've had instances where I've physically really injured myself. And I had to see the chiropractor a lot and had to take it totally easy. And so I'm learning. I'm learning to pay attention to the little things. I'm learning to stretch before I do a really long run, or stretch after I trim the horses. There's different things of care for myself, ways that I've learned to love myself and pay attention so that I don't injure myself. And this happens in our physical body, and it also happens in our mental mind. If we don't listen when our mind is screaming out that it needs attention and love, and it needs us to stop and listen to it and give it what it needs, whether that means, taking time to journal or making an appointment with a therapist, having the hard conversations, whatever that is, you stop and you listen to your mind. You don't keep just shoving it away saying you're fine, because eventually it doesn't just dissolve. It just builds up. And then we have this huge breakdown, or we get cancer, or something huge happens like that because our body's been storing all of this trauma that we're not listening to and taking time to stop and listen. And so, like I said, I'm speaking to the choir. I need this same thing. I'm trying to learn to get better at it. But this is such an important way to love ourselves. It's to listen to our bodies. It's really simple, but so fucking important. I have a whole list of notes. I'm probably not even going to touch on a lot of them. Just kind of keeps me on track. But here's the thing. Like, I've decided that I want to talk about the things that I'm passionate about and that are meaningful to me. And I hope there's something in each of these episodes that a takeaway, like some sort of food that you can take with you, that you relate to, or that is helpful to you. So I try not, I say all this, but I'm trying not too hard. Sorry, blah, blah, blah. I try to not plan too hard, because I want this to be a very authentic podcast. It's me showing up. And anyways, enough of that. Yeah, so I'm looking over my notes, and I think one of the things of like the biggest hurdle for me of loving myself is that I just hated myself my whole life, because the religion I was taught was that I was, born a sinner and unlovable and incapable of even doing enough or being enough, that, God had to send his son to die for me. And if it wasn't for that, I would just burn in hell forever. But here's the strange thing is, like, even though I was taught that, there's nothing you can do to deserve God's love. You just get it because of what he decided to do for you. But at the same time, it's like that in the same breath, they say, but do all these things, don't do all these things. Keep pushing, striving, working hard. It doesn't make sense to me thinking back to it now. Like, wait a minute, I can never be good enough, so why am I trying anyways? What's the fucking point? But I did. I bought into all of it. And I beat myself up on a constant basis. I hated myself. I felt like just a horrible sinner person that could never be enough. And so, of course, it's hard for me to love myself. Of course, it's hard for me to look at me and say, no, I am enough. I'm perfect. I have something to offer this world that nobody else has. Like, those are the things I'm trying to rewire into my brain. So I was remembering back, like, what was the first time that I actually did something, an effort to start learning to love myself? And it's just a funny, silly, simple story. So after the whole thing came down about my dad and getting him put in prison and the trauma that had been done to my family, our family started seeking counseling. And it was one of my, it wasn't my first, but it was in the early stages of counseling, that I remember that day I was crying and crying and crying a lot, just feeling so much guilt and regret that I was such a bad mom. Like, I was a horrible mom. Who would allow this into her family? Who would allow her own children to get hurt? And I just was sobbing and crying. And I remember my counselor telling me, you know what? You're a really good mom. And I sat there in disbelief, like, what? I don't even know why you're saying that. That makes no sense to me. And they looked at me and said, no, you're a really good mom. And I know that you're trying very hard. And yes, this did happen in your family, but now that you see the truth, like you didn't know before, now that you see it, like you're doing all the things to make the changes and protect and champion and do what you need to do for your children. And that's what good parents do. They don't get it right all of the time. But when they see they messed up, they make it right and they do what they need to do. And it was like, literally like listening to a foreign language. I sat there like, what? It's so hard to wrap my brain around that. So I remember I left that session that day and I was really just trying to let that soak in. And it was so hard. It was like trying to pour water on concrete. Like, it just doesn't soak in. I just was like, I want to take this and I want to believe this, but I just am having such a hard time. So I didn't drive straight home because I needed some time to process. So I did what everyone does when they need to process. They go to Walmart. I don't know why I went to Walmart, okay? I don't even like Walmart, I promise you. I try to stay away from it like the plague. But for whatever reasons, I went to Walmart, okay? And I wandered around. That just shows you how much out of my mind I was, okay? And I remember I went to the sports area, as I love sports. And well, of course, I tell you I don't love football, and now I say I love sports. I love going to the sports sections because I love balls and I love playing sports stuff. So anyways, enough said. I was walking through the aisles and I remember seeing this hat. And I thought, that's a cool hat. And then the other part of me was like, no, you don't need a hat. You have hats. It was a ball cap of some sort. And the very practical part of me was like, no, it's a waste of money. You don't need that hat. And I stood there just staring at that hat. And then all of a sudden, this little voice from within my own body just came into my mind and said, you know what? If you want that hat, then you buy it for yourself. You deserve that hat because you're a good mom. I can't hardly tell this story because I remember back to that woman who felt like the worst mom in the whole fucking universe. And I stood there in the aisle just looking at that hat for probably 10 minutes. Wondering, do I deserve this hat? Do I really deserve to do something nice for myself? I'm just a horrible person and a horrible mom. And I finally was like, fuck it all. I grabbed the hat and I said, I'm going to buy this hat and I'm going to wear it until I believe that I'm a good mom. And I bought myself the hat and I wore it home. And my kids were like, Mom, I like your new hat. And I said, it's my I'm a good mom hat. And just as amazing as they always are, they just said, that's so awesome. You are a good mom. And it wasn't my kids telling me I'm a bad mom. It was all these voices inside, And I went to counseling next week and I told my counselor about it. And they were just really proud of me. And I put that hat on. Every time I put it on for like the first year, I would remember that. And the more I wore it, the more I started believing it. And it's so simple, but it was a pivotal moment for me to buy myself, not only just buy myself something, because the way I grew up, for one, we didn't have a lot of money. For two, just had to grow up very practical minded. If it's not something that I need, I don't buy it for myself. And I will buy anything for my kids and my husband, but never bought myself anything. It was very, very rare that I would spend money on myself. It had to be this massive need. So that was a big deal for me, to buy myself a hat. And then not just that, but to start acknowledging that I am a good mom. So that was the beginning of it. And it's been small steps every day. And sometimes I go forward 5 or 6 steps, and then sometimes I go backwards, but it's not this, oh, well, now I got it figured out. I'm just going to love myself and it's all good. No, it's some days are just, some days it's just trying to control my thoughts when I find so much negativity. And some days I didn't control them all day, and at the end of the day, I just acknowledged, wow, this was a really shitty day, and I thought negatively about myself all day. I'm going to try to do better tomorrow. Sometimes that's my best. But I'm learning these little things, like making coffee for myself. Oh my goodness. That is the way I love myself. Simple things. Making popcorn for myself. You guys, I love my popcorn. That is the way I love myself. Sometimes sitting underneath my kitchen table and hiding from my kids to eat some pretzels or some chips by myself without sharing. That's another way I love myself. They can be so simple. I've learned and really practiced last year something. This might just sound crazy, but last year I practiced buying myself new things.